Hi, welcome back to my channel Manga Hoarder. My name is Laura. Today I'm going to do the spoiler tag. This was created by Nell and Scott from Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. I will leave their original video linked down below. I also will tag a couple people, also linked down below, and if I've tagged you, you probably will be notified because I think YouTube does that now. Notifies people if you tag them. But if I didn't tag you and you still want to do it, please do. That's how I do tag videos. Rarely get tagged, just do them anyway. That's fine. That's totally legit because I said so. I am just going to go through these questions. It is a discussion about spoilers and what constitutes a spoiler, and I don't know that I've done a discussion on this topic before or a tag on this topic, so I thought it would be a good one to do. And I think it's sort of relevant across fiction, regardless of the media. So whether you watch movies or TV or you read, prose or comics, all fiction I think is legitimately relevant to the topic of spoilers. So I thought I would do this. I thought it would be a good tag to do. I haven't really planned out my answers yet, so we'll see how this goes. So question number one is, what do you consider a spoiler? I think, what do I consider a spoiler? I think it's hard to quantify what a spoiler is. Except for that you just kind of innately know. It's anything that spoils the reading experience. So if I tell you about something, it spoils your enjoyment of it to some extent. So if I reveal who the murderer is in a murder mystery, you will feel disappointed because that's the point that you are trying to get to in your book. That's sort of like the point of why you're reading that book. So of course you're going to feel spoiled, or you'll feel like I spoiled the reading experience, because it's not as exciting because you now already know the result. So it's any sort of moment in the plot that I could reveal that would spoil your enjoyment of kind of whatever happens at the end. So kind of it's plot-based, revealing things that would lessen your enjoyment in a first-time read. I guess that sort of makes sense. Number two is, does the genre you're reading impact what you consider to be a spoiler? Yes, definitely, particularly if you compare across prose to manga. And I know people say manga is not a genre. It is a genre. Genre is just a way to classify, and if you're just classifying between forms are genres. Even I have said manga is not a genre. Just saying that so I can answer the question. So here we've got a series. I have a long series called Video Girl AI. This is by Masakazu Katsura. It is a 15-volume long series. In a series like this, it's just sort of a romance, drama romance. I would say that you are pretty safe to talk about this first volume in its entirety until the last chapter. And then anything after this chapter is dangerous ground, because this here is the scenario. This here is setting up the plot to the story. This here is your likely first twist in the story. Likely something in the situation has changed. And it might be at that point that story can be spoiled for someone. It's sort of at this point that you should be hooked onto the story. So if I told you what happened in this last chapter or two, you might decide, well, I don't want to read anymore because I already know what happens. So I would say in manga you have a pretty good, clear definition, or at least in my mind, this seems like a pretty standard format that I can use to say, have I said too much about a book? Well, when does that thing happen? I'm not saying that you can't talk about manga throughout its plot. I think there's lots of scenarios in the greater scope of the story that you can talk about without spoiling the story for someone. But I think that you might be walking on eggshells to talk about anything past the point of the first volume, minus about 2 chapters. So manga I feel like is actually pretty easy to avoid spoilers. But then there's like things like we have Walking Man. This is by Jiro Taniguchi. It's just a story about a man who walks. I have now told you the entire plot of this book. He walks, and then he walks. There's no plot. And so I don't think you can really spoil anything, because the point of this book is not the plot. The point of this book is its beautiful art and its beautiful setting and the emotion that it evokes. So you can't really spoil that. It's really only in stories where the plot is sort of significant, or the plot is the purpose of the story. I think for most stories the plot is the purpose, so it is a little bit easier to spoil, you know, most stories. But there are a couple of things like that, just sort of offshoots that are hard to spoil. Another one would be, I have sitting here, Dementia 21 by Shintaro Kago. This is a horror manga of very bizarre situations where this girl who is a caregiver, a nurse, a caregiver for senior citizens, and horror situations happen. It is a series of short vignettes based on a theme. I think it would be incredibly hard to spoil this story because every single chapter is its own story. So you could kind of tell the situation, but you really never can explain it fully without experiencing it. I don't think that you would want to explain the plot and the situation and the conclusion of every single tiny story. There's a lot of stories in here. So it just doesn't really make sense as something that you could really spoil. I don't feel like this is something you could spoil easily. Even if I told you the solution to the plot, like, they're so bizarre, they don't really quite make sense. They're not like typical horror titles where, you know, oh, you know, she's hiding in the TV. Oh, that person is actually a ghost. Like, it's not that kind of scenario. So, like, there are definitely genre-specific things, even within just manga itself, that I think are hard to spoil. If you're talking about prose, you know, whether you compare a romance novel to, like, a mystery novel, like, I don't even have to say anything. You know that there's a difference between those things. The point of a mystery novel is to find out what the mystery is and how it has been resolved. Like, to resolve the mystery, to find out the solution, the answer. Some mystery novels start out with the solution. They tell you how things have happened, and now it's all about how that particular character figures it out. And so you just sort of go on the journey of figuring it out. So the actual solution to that particular mystery might not be the spoiler. It might be how they come across all of the solution might be the spoiler. So, like, it just entirely depends on what you're reading and what the actual plot of the book is. But I think we all innately know what a spoiler is and how to navigate without ruining things for the next person. Number 3 says, all the best bits are in the trailer. Sometimes a synopsis can be too detailed. Do you research books prior to reading them, or do you go in blind? If you've watched this channel at all, you know that I am a pretty go in blind type person, but it's not because I care about being spoiled, and I don't know if this says in here, do you care about being spoiled? I don't care about being spoiled. It doesn't matter to me, even a little bit, at all. I genuinely don't care. So whether or not I read the introduction has more to do with is there a point? Is there a point to me reading the introduction? If I'm going to read a classic novel, I might read the introduction if I'm not familiar with the story already, because I want to get more insight into the story. You know, like, if I've already watched the movie, why would I need to read the introduction? I've already got the story. But once I read the story, then I'll go back and read the introduction. Because usually there's quite a lot more interesting content. You know, when I am reading something like a little bit more independent type manga, oh, I have one sitting here next to me. I have Verite here. This is a combination of comics from, I believe, India and Japan. So half of them are Indian comics and half of them are Japanese comics. And in the middle is an essay. I always, if manga have an essay in them, before they even go on the shelf, before I, you know, bother putting them even in this room, I read the essay. I might not read the manga for years, but I read the essay right away because I love the essay. I don't really care if it spoils what the manga's about, because I feel like there's so little writing in English about manga, and essays are so fresh and like current research that they just make me super excited. So whether it's just like a long introduction that usually tells you a bit about the plot or about the author, it's worth my time, in my opinion, to read them. So in the context of manga, I always read the introduction first. In the context of classics, it just depends on whether I know the story. I actually like to know the story of classics. All the twists and turns, it's totally fine. I feel like it makes the story more accessible, because if the writing ever gets a little bit too clunky or too old, too wordy, then I can move through the plot, because I can see what's happening underneath, because I already know where I'm going. So I feel like it actually helps me get through classics easier if I already know what's going to happen. And then as for things like, I don't know, like mysteries or like other types of prose, I don't normally read too much about a plot. I don't usually do too much research on them. I might do enough research to see, does it fit with a readathon prompt or something like that, or has someone told me to read it. I don't really worry about it because I will know what the book is about soon. But especially if I'm struggling to go through a book, I will probably look up what the plot is and see if it's worth my time to keep going with it. But I am absolutely okay with being spoiled, and you know, I like rereading because I already know what's coming, and so now I get to actually enjoy the writing of the book rather than just worry about what's happening. So yeah, the spoiler thing is, it's really a non-issue actually for me, except for that I'm trying to navigate because I know it's an issue for just about everyone else. Number 4 says sometimes the introduction or translator's notes can spoil the ending, especially for classics. Has this ever happened to you? I feel like it's sort of part of the same question, but I guess so. Like, I don't think I've ever been spoiled. I've never been negatively impacted by translator's notes. Certainly the ending has been shared, but it's usually, oh, that's going to happen at the end, now I want to read it. That's usually how I feel when I know what's going to happen. I might feel a little bit more like dragging my feet if I don't know what's going to happen. I like to know what's going to happen. Yeah. Number 5, name a time somebody spoiled a novel for you. I don't know. I think people are less likely to spoil a novel for you. I genuinely, I don't know that I ever have noticed someone spoiling a novel for me. I've never been upset about knowing how a book ends. I don't know that it's ever stopped me from wanting to read a book. It's more likely that it encourages me to want to read a book, knowing how it ends. And you can tell people, you know, 100 times, it's fine, you can tell me the ending, and they will withhold that information because they don't like being spoiled, and they don't want you to be upset with them for spoiling you. I don't get spoiled. You can tell me the ending. I genuinely don't care. So I don't know that anyone's ever spoiled a novel for me. But they certainly don't like to either, and that's particularly frustrating when you're on the opposite side of the coin. Have you ever spoiled a novel for somebody else? That's possible. My sister also has the same feelings about spoilers that I do. We both don't care. And so if I read something, I will tell her the full plot. I guess I could have answered with that, you know, if she reads something, she will tell me the full plot and then tell me whether she thinks that I should bother with it. It saves me time. I already know that story. And particularly with things like manga, where I have been reading them for 20 years, I read tons of it. You get a really good sense of the tropes and the themes and just the common cliches. So that if she tells me, well, this is like this and this happens here and, you know, this is a funny part and this is how it ends, I can know whether or not it's worth reading, because I already know all those things. So yeah, she will willingly spoil things for me. She's the one person who will spoil things for me, which is great. And I will willingly spoil things for her, and I know that she enjoys being spoiled, because she wants to know, and she wants to know if it's worth her time as well. So I will spoil things for her. That's fine. She'll, you know, she wants to know about it, I'll tell her about it. Or if I'm enjoying a book, I'll say, oh, guess who's the murderer? You know, like I'll go through the whole plot as I'm reading it. I'll be like, oh, we've discovered the murderer, it's so-and-so. Like, she's fine with knowing that. She asked me to tell her that stuff, so it's nice to be able to talk about books without any boundaries with someone. That's really nice to be able to do. But I will name a time that I spoiled someone for something else. When I was a child, I told my next door neighbor that Santa Claus didn't exist. That's a plot you should never reveal when you're a child. I didn't know other children didn't know that, because we were never told that Santa Claus was real. So I spoiled Santa Claus for a friend, and boy did her mother ever let me have it. So that's a particular memorable moment where I realized that people didn't want to be spoiled. So that's sort of the picture I have when people get, when I talk about things I don't want to spoil you for. I realize that some people really want the mystery. They want the mystery to remain a mystery until they discover it for themselves. So I try to provide that service for others. It's hard though. Number 7 is, if spoilers ruin novels, are there some authors or genres you can't reread? No. The only people that I can't reread are books that I just thought were dull. Not because they were dull because they were boring, but dull because they were poorly written. They were just a waste of time. They were badly edited. That's really the criteria of whether or not I'll reread it. If I disliked it, willing to reread it. If it was a mystery, willing to reread it. If I know it word for word, willing to reread it. I like rereading. I think there is a lot of pleasure to be gained from rereading. I think you can see things from a different perspective if you reread it, and particularly with things where the point of the story is to discover a mystery or to, you know, uncover this thing that's been hidden. I think once you know what the thing is that's been hidden, now you can go back and see every hint that has been indicating what's been hidden, or you can see how the author has built to that point. So you get a new perspective when you know it. You have a different experience, and you have different feelings towards the book, maybe in your second or third or 10th or, you know, 100th reread. But every time you reread it, you get to see something different, because you already have those past experiences to build on. I'm not now in my second reread, you know, anticipating the ending, anticipating, you know, that climactic moment. I'm now looking at kind of the journey to the moment, and that's really what I like to read in books. So, yeah. Question number 8 is, when reviewing, are you spoiler-free? Does this limit your ability to discuss? I don't think so. I think you can discuss just about anything you want to without really getting into spoilers too much. I think that there are moments where it would be nice to be able to talk about spoilers, but that's a completely different thing than a review. And I think a review is more about talking about the general concepts, Was the author successful in those concepts, and should you read it? Whereas a discussion is more about, what are the themes in this? Why do the themes matter? How do those themes relate to history? How do those themes relate to other books in the genre? Like, the discussion is more all-encompassing of ideas, whereas the review is more just talking about whether someone should read it. Is it good? You know, it's more of a qualifying of material, whereas discussions is talking about, you know, the minutiae of every little aspect of that book. I don't think most people get into discussions. They're really hard to put together. I have attempted putting together discussions before, but I don't have time to do all that kind of research and multiple reading and getting you know, far into that material. So most of what I talk about are kind of more on the review side of discussions, whereas you know, I do follow channels that do some really good in-depth discussions about material, but they are also more on the kind of university course level discussion side, so I don't think most people are doing that kind of talk. So yeah, it's really easy to avoid spoilers for the general populace to hear about your thoughts on a book. You can discuss mostly what you want to talk about in a book. The problem, I think, particularly for manga, is that when you talk about manga, there is a visual component. It's not like prose, where you can just talk about things in the abstract, talk about the ideas of the words. But, you know, when you're talking about manga, you might say, oh, here's this great artistic design. Well, if I show you this volume, and I've showed you the other volume, you've already been spoiled now. Guess what? These characters grow up in this volume. And that's actually a significant event that happens in this series. So, the visual component makes things challenging. You know, and to not share the visual component makes things challenging. So, yeah, there is sort of a slight difference depending on what you're talking about, but I think you can still avoid spoilers. I think you can avoid spoilers when you talk about books, and I think I do avoid spoilers, and I think most of it is, you know, for the fact that I'm pretty lazy when it comes to talking about comics. I would love to be able to do really robust discussions of books, and I take so many notes. Especially this year, I've been taking so many notes with the idea that at some point I will do these really in-depth discussions, but I know how much work that's going to be, and I just don't have the capacity right now to put that kind of thing together. I would love to. I would love that be what this channel is these really in-depth discussions, but for now you get spoiler-free chat about books, and that's good too, because I like talking about manga in all its forms. Yeah. So I guess in answer to the question, does it limit your ability? Kind of limits, but it's not the same thing. It's not a review. So no, it doesn't. I guess if that makes sense. So that's basically it for the questions. The last one is shout out, tell us 5 channels you enjoy and tag them. I'm going to tag the channels down below just because I don't know who's been tagged to do this, and I probably will tag people who read kind of more of a variety of kinds of things. I also don't know when this video is going up, so it might go up, you know, a month from now rather than as I'm filming it, because I pre-films everything. Yeah, so that's the tag. That's the spoiler tag. Let me know what your thoughts are on spoilers. Do you like being spoiled? Do you like not being spoiled? Do you even watch reviews if you haven't read the book yet? Because, you know, I think even some people find reviews repellent because they're going to be spoiled. Yeah, so let me know about that down below. I'd be really curious about it. Anyway, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.